Excellent.
It's always great to talk to my fellow film critics about the year in review in film, especially this year, 2025. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to Jake Wilson, who is the film reviewer for The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald and elsewhere. Jake, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thanks, Peter. Nice to be here again.
Always good to talk to you. And just before we get your list of best films of the year, do you have an overall comment about the way cinema is going this year in 2025?
Well, I don't. I'm so sorry, Peter. I can't. I'm just looking at my image of myself on the screen, and it's a black bar cutting across the top of me. Because I can see the bottom half of myself, and I just if this is a technical issue, I want to resolve it now rather than later.
Yeah, you're
Can
coming
you?
through okay on my screen.
Okay, it must be some weird thing that's happening on my end. No
Yeah.
worries, as you were. Okay, so how's cinema been going? Well, cinema is in all sorts of problems. There's the rise of AI and what that's going to do to the film industry. There's a lot of uncertainties about what movies are now, I think, in lots of different ways. And certainly, and this is not a bad thing, it's impossible for anybody now to say that they're keeping up with cinema. There are so many, many, many channels that you can consume moving images on. There are dozens and dozens of streaming services. There are literally hundreds of new films coming into the country every week here in Australia by legal and illegal channels. If you want, you can watch a million different things that I know nothing about. So I feel that any comment I could make is just my particular lens on what I happen to have seen, but not a comment really on how cinema is going artistically. I do have some sense of what's happening, as I say, to the global industry, which is mostly quite concerning. But I don't have a sense of where cinema is at as an art form right now.
Fair enough. No, I understand. It's a huge industry and so many films being produced independently and so on. Okay, let's talk about your best films of the year.
And also the worst films. I do have a worst films
All right,
list.
we'll see how we go with time. Keep going.
Oh, okay. I thought we might. I can go through it very quickly. I thought we might start with the worst
Yeah,
films just
sure.
to get those out of the way, but I'm not going to dwell on them. I promise you that. Uh, so I do have five worst films.
Yep.
The number five is a supposed romantic comedy called Splitsville, made by a couple of American guys. Michael Angelo Covino is the director. And the reason I put it on the list is simply that to me, it very, very quickly stopped making sense or having any relation to even what I could understand as a very stylized form of human behavior. I just didn't understand why these characters were supposed to be behaving as they were, let alone be in any way endearing. Um, but I mean, it is a screwball comedy, but even on that level, I thought there had to be some logic, which was lacking.
Hmm.
Uh, Number four, Chris Miller. There are two Chris Millers or Christopher Millers who are both direct animation. One of them did the Lego movie. The other one has done, I think, Puss in Boots and this latest reboot of the Smurfs, which is not any better than it sounds and has James Corden as the voice of a anonymous Smurf looking for an identity. And these are the sorts of things that you only see as a adult in your 40s if you either have kids, which I don't, or if you're a film reviewer, which I am. But I did not get any great joy from it.
Mhm.
Okay, um, so going to number three. Number three is a movie called The Ritual, an exorcism movie with Al Pacino. We've had a lot of exorcism movies. This one is essentially just a vehicle for Al Pacino to go over the top as the Exorcist, and I don't have anything really more to say about it. It's not a very good movie, in my view. Number two is Red Sonja, which was done as a Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle in the 1980s, although it's supposed to be a story about a swordswoman in uh, prehistory in the same sort of era as Conan the Barbarian, created by the same writer. And I sort of wanted to like this one, but it is a very clunky and not sufficiently high budgeted movie to compete with the kind of thing that it's trying to emulate. And the dialogue is not good. And I mean, there are various things that just feel very amateurish about it. Although perhaps not so much as the last film on this worst films list, which is a easy front runner. I think it was this was not a difficult choice, and the film is Simon West's Brideheart with Rebel Wilson. Did you see that one, Peter?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Awful.
it's pretty awful. And yes, as I say, I did not feel that I had to wrestle with myself to decide that this was the worst film of the year. It is a riff on Die Hard, starring Rebel Wilson. Even for that, it's a little bit worse than you might have thought it was going to be. Again, they didn't really have enough money. I guess that is one comment I would make on the movie industry is that apart from the huge blockbusters, which cost hundreds of millions of dollars, almost everything, the smaller genre films, are being done with less money than they used to be. And it's often said that the medium budget film, the film which costs, say, in today's terms, $40 million, is kind of dead. And this does make a difference. You do notice it with all these different kinds of smaller genre films that they're working on a smaller canvas than they used to.
Yep. Okay, that's a good list of worst films. Let's go to your best films of the year.
Yeah. So I have, as sometimes I do, a couple of different kinds of, well, not lists, but there's a few different kinds of things I wanted to nominate, and one of them is just a couple of films which I would have had on my list last year, which had I seen them, and in particular two from great directors who have been working for a very long time and made haven't I think neither of them made films for a few years, and they've made terrific films. No, actually, well, it's more true of one than the other, but I'll just say who I have in mind. There's David Cronenberg's The Shrouds, and that was a film that I didn't have played at MIF last year, but I didn't see it then, and then it was out on release this year. So I've excluded it from the main list because it was released. It was premiered in Melbourne last year, but it's a very moving film. It's about death and physical decay and grief, which are themes that are not alien to David Cronenberg, but it is clearly very personal, and it's no longer playing, as some of his films have, by any sort of genre rules, even the rules of, you might say, art house cinema as a genre. So that was one. And the other one, which I perhaps like even better, is Mike Leigh's Hard Truths. Again, I think it played originally at a festival last year and then was on release this year, but I only saw it this year. And it is the first film Mike Leigh has made in a few years, and it's very much him doing what he does, which is the comedy of character. Really, it's kind of heightened in some ways, but it's also very recognizable. It's a portrait of an extreme but recognizable kind of person who's very depressed and angry and makes life a misery for everybody around them, but is also very funny. And this is the kind of character that Mike Leigh does especially well. So, and that was maybe my favourite film really this year. But as I say, I haven't got it on the main list.
Okay.
I also wanted to mention quickly two TV shows by two of my favourite people in TV. One is Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal, the second season. Nathan Fielder is a great comic and audacious thinker, and those who have not discovered him have some surprises ahead. And this, I won't go into the details. The premise of this show is about his efforts to improve aviation safety, and it's 6 episodes on that. And this leads them in some surprising directions. It's not a mockumentary; it's a sort of real documentary, but in a well, I mean, I to explain that would take some time. And the other show is Vince Gilligan's Pluribus, which is still going, has yet to complete its first season, which finishes on Wednesday. So those two shows, and I'll have more to say probably about Pluribus when it gets to the end, but those were the most interesting TV shows I saw this
Uh,
year.
okay.
Um, I only have a top 10. I'm not going to do 20 of the main list
Okay.
because I wanted to get in some other things, which for one reason or another don't fit.
Yep.
So finally, before I go into this top 10, I wanted to mention a film called Open Doom Crescendo, which was actually from 2022. So it's a few years old, but it didn't make it to Melbourne, as far as I know, until this year when it played at the Brunswick Underground Film Festival. It's the better part of 3 hours long. It's from a Canadian director called named Terry Chu. It's a labour of love. He made it, I believe, over several years, really on no budget with his friends on this patch of waste ground on the outskirts, I think, of Montreal. I might be wrong about the city, but it is so it's a very do-it-yourself home movie kind of epic. And I was talking about how genre films nowadays don't have as high budgets as they used to. This is a film that was made for nothing and is all the better for it. And I recommend seeking it out. So those are the special mentions. Also, want to say before I get into this top 10 that there are so many films I have not seen that did come out through cinemas, and especially this last couple of months, I feel there's been, the end of the year tends to be backloaded with movies. So movies like Die My Love, I wanted to see, and Richard Linklater's Nouvelle Vague, and which is out next year, and quite a number of others which I meant to get around to. I just haven't got around to. So because a movie is not on this list
Sure.
doesn't mean I didn't rate it.
Yep.
Okay. So and some of the movies I also put on this list, I also put on partly because I thought they were a bit underrated. And one of those at number 10 is Olivia Hermanos's The History of Sound, which just came out a little while ago. I was moved by it, and I was slightly surprised when I found out later on that it had not been universally well received. In some ways, it's quite an old-fashioned kind of melodrama. In other ways, it's not a film that would have been so likely to have been made in the past because it is a love story between two guys, and it's a little bit modelled on Brokeback Mountain, but in other ways, it's quite different. It's not really about, in my view, these two guys falling in love, which happens in the early 20th century, and being persecuted for it. They meet and they have this time together, and then they come apart for reasons that are not really evident until the very end of the film. And when you find out the whole story, it casts a different light on everything that you've seen earlier. But anyway, Paul Mescal and especially Josh O'Connor, who has a smaller role, um, are very good. And again, there's a lot of restraint in this film. I think perhaps some people would like to see a story like this told with less restraint, but that is what worked for me about it. Number nine, film that totally caught me by surprise, although perhaps it shouldn't have. Again, a film I just saw, basically, which isn't out yet, but was at the British Film Festival, so I'm going to count it, which is The Coral, by Nicholas Hittner, but perhaps more importantly, from a screenplay by Alan Bennett. Alan Bennett, the great playwright, British writer of, many different things, but he and Nicholas Hittner have done a whole series of films together over the past couple of decades. And the thing about Alan Bennett, and maybe especially about this film, is that he knows exactly how to please a certain kind of audience, which makes it significant when he makes certain choices which are not perhaps the choices that would please the audience most. Which I mean that this is sort of a feel-good movie in some ways on paper. It's about a choral society in World War One putting on a show. It's a backstage comedy. It's about them putting on an oratorio. Edward Elgar's The Dream of Gerontius, and these people from different walks of life band together to put it on. So it's sort of this idea of how everybody can come together in times of trouble during the war and achieve something. But that said, there's a lot of melancholy and dissatisfaction in various aspects of what happens, which is also very much what Alan Bennett is about. And I'll mention that although the star of the film is Rafe Fiennes, who plays the choir master, in a lot of ways it belongs more to Roger Allam, who plays one of the leading figures in this choral society. Again, yeah, a film that was not exactly what I expected it to be, but when I thought about who Alan Bennett is, I thought, well, I shouldn't have been surprised.
Okay, let's keep moving.
I mean, obviously, I could talk about any of these films for quite a while, but I'll try not to. I felt very, very mixed feelings about in a bunch of ways, but I couldn't leave it off. This list was one battle after another, which has been greatly acclaimed, perhaps more acclaimed than most of Paul Thomas Anderson's films, and he's rightly a very sort of highly rated director in world cinema, not just American cinema. There's a lot of aspects of this movie that threw me off course. I know Paul Thomas Anderson loves to throw people off course, but not always in a good way for me. It is couched as a political statement. It's about Leonardo DiCaprio as a former revolutionary who kind of gets drawn back into the fray. The politics of it seem rather abstract to me, but what I like about it is kind of the jolts that are in it cinematically, the score by Johnny Greenwood, the weirdness of some of the performances, especially Sean Penn as the bad guy. It does seemingly come down in some ways to quite straightforward good guys versus bad guys kind of struggle, but within that there are so many zigzags and so much cinematic invention that I'm looking forward to seeing it again and seeing what I make of it the second time.
Okay.
Okay, number 7.
Yep.
Film that came out at the start of the year and got quite a bit of attention then, but I feel has not really been talked about all that much since, is Helena Rain's Baby Girl with Nicole Kidman. I'm putting this on primarily, I think, for Nicole Kidman's performance. It's not a total departure from various other things she's done, but it is pretty bold, and she's not afraid, as we know, to be eccentric and to go out on a limb emotionally and to play these characters who are both tightly wound and emotionally exposed. And she gets to do all that in this movie. And it's, you could say, a romantic comedy, even though it was billed as a thriller. I certainly don't think it's a thriller. It's a rather fanciful story about love or desire or sex in the workplace. And she's a CEO, and she falls for this guy who's much younger and involved with her company, and it's inappropriate in all sorts of ways. But to me, it's pretty funny. And unlike that movie Splitsville I mentioned earlier, although it's outlandish, and although I don't necessarily buy all the details of how the company works and so on, it does still feel like it has a tie to human behaviour. Okay, so number six, a movie that will come out next year. Again, it's been very acclaimed. I'll talk more about it probably when I get to write about it, which I will. Is Jeffrey Panahi's It Was Just an Accident, which played at MIF. And Jeffrey Panahi he's a significant figure in Iranian cinema, partly because he's been politically outspoken and he's had all sorts of troubles with getting his films made and so on. And he's been to prison. He's in the news for reasons that are not just about the nature of his films as such, but he is also a unusual filmmaker, and I haven't necessarily liked all his recent films as much as I liked the ones he made in the first half of his career before the Iranian authorities really came down on him. But this one I really do like, and I like it probably better than anything he's done for quite some time. And it's quite an unusual mix of tones. It has both comedy and terror in it, and you don't know which is going to win out until the end. Maybe even at the end, you don't quite know which has won out. Okay, number five. This again from close to the start of the year, A Complete Unknown, which is the Bob Dylan biopic with Timothy Chalamet. And I know you can help me, Peter, because at this moment, because I'm doing this without all my notes in front of me, at this moment, the name of the director has gone out of my head. So could you remind me? James, very well-known director. He did, for example, now I'm completely going to fail you, the old Wolverine movie with Hugh Jackman, which I should know the name of. Do you know exactly who I'm talking about?
I have to look it up. It's not Mangold, is it?
James Mangold, yes.
Ah,
And this is a symptom of encroaching old age, no doubt. But I should know James Mangold because I've admired many of his movies: Walk the Line, Identity, Girl Interrupted. He's been a very consistent filmmaker in all sorts of different genres, and he always brings to those genres a really actually distinctive sensibility without insisting that these are, James Mangold films as opposed to whatever genre they are. So I don't think anybody would have made a film about Bob Dylan quite like this other than James Mangold. And something I often think about his films is that a lot of his films are monster movies in different ways. And in this movie, James Mangold is certainly looking at Bob Dylan, or Robert Zimmerman, who sort of turns himself into Bob Dylan, as a kind of monster, but a monster to be viewed with admiration. Number four, Sinners. another sort of big Hollywood film, another film that's been talked about a lot and will undoubtedly be talked about when the Oscars come around uh, next year. And certainly the boldest sort of big blockbustery Hollywood film that came out this year and has come out for a long time. And the reason it's done so well, I think it's got something for everybody. It's got sex and romance and vampires and music and action. I thought of it as, in some ways, a bit like a Bollywood film where they just throw in a bit of everything. And then it's got a political aspect to it, or it's a statement about cultural wars, who has the right, in this particular case, to play the blues. This is set in the 1930s, and it sort of revolves around the opening of this blues joint and these various complications that arise from that. What it's saying, in my mind, is not at all straightforward. I wrote quite a long piece trying to tease out what I thought it was saying, and to me, it has a lot of ambivalence in it, which perhaps partly comes from Ryan Coogler's place in the film industry as somebody who is both trying to say something personal and something that comes out of what he feels is his heritage, and then also work for the broadest possible audience and work for a Hollywood studio. And all of that perhaps is getting played out in the Sinners, but there are other things in it as well. So,
Okay.
number three, this is a film relatively few people liked, but I was so delighted first that it had been made, and then that to me it was not a disappointment, which is James L. Brooks's Ella McKay, which is just out of the box. And I will write at some point about Ella McKay. I haven't yet. It's nobody could or would have made it other than James L. Brooks, who is this guy who came out of sitcoms years and years ago and made these very successful mainstream films like Terms of Endearment, and then has sort of gradually worked his way towards a kind of marginal position, although because he's a billionaire and one of the men behind the Simpsons, has kind of some freedom to do whatever he wants. This is supposed to be a political film, but I think it's probably ultimately more about a family, and especially about a very difficult father-daughter relationship that gets played out in this sort of fantasy political arena. It's got a very mainstream kind of gloss to it, but it's also got this unique kind of James L. Brooks dialogue, which is always reassessing itself as it goes along. Every line, in a way, sounds like it's meant to be the big line out of the trailer, but then another line comes along and kind of erases the one you just heard. Very hard to describe the effect of where James L. Brooks is at the moment. These are all very disconcerting films up the top of the list. I am more interested in films I find disconcerting. Number two is This Life of Mine, which I did write about again, a film by a French director who died very shortly after it was made, Sophie Fillier, who she made a number of other films, almost entirely comedies, but she was never super well known, certainly in Australia. It's about a woman having a nervous breakdown, and the word nervous breakdown covers a lot of ground, but she does get institutionalized in this movie. So you start off thinking it's going to be about this sort of wacky, eccentric character getting through life, and then by halfway through, she's not getting through life at all. She's gone to an institution, and she has what might be I don't know, it might be schizophrenia. I can't quite tell. But the film is possibly, in certain ways, on the side of the mental illness. It does, at the same time, remain a comedy. I was, yeah, no idea where this film was going, and I was very struck by it. Uh, so that's at number two, and number one, certainly the film that disconcerted me most this year, although I'm not absolutely sure in some ways what I think of it, was Olivia Sacks's Sirat, which was at the Melbourne International Film Festival, and I think will again get a release in the new year. And that is a film which it is best really to know very little about going in. It does depend on its surprises. You could call it, in a very loose sense, a sort of musical or perhaps a sort of science fiction film. But the one thing I'll say is if you are feeling in a emotionally fragile or vulnerable state, this might not be the film to go see because it does shake you up and knock you a bit sideways. And you might or might not feel that was a good experience. It's about a father and a son in what appears to be North Africa, and there's a sort of illegal rave on in this remote desert area. That's where it begins. So those are the films that came to mind when I looked at what I'd seen this year that had struck me and stuck with me in one way or another. But as I say, there are many more films I plan to see which came out this year I have
Yeah,
not seen.
that's fine. We've only got about 4 minutes left. Do you want to mention anything else?
Oh, well, this is the first time ever that I think I've done it in less than the allotted time. So let me think how I can make the most of that. I guess I will mention briefly that I've talked about my writing
Hmm.
longer pieces. There are some of them which you can read in this Substack. I've got Moving Targets. It's kind of on hiatus now, but the plan is that it will come back. I started doing it when I had, for various reasons, a bit more time on my hands than I do currently. But there's about 25 pieces of 2,000 words or so in there, which are things that I didn't write about for the Age, and I considered at more length. And I'll also mention that another thing I've been involved with this year and the last few years is a institution called the BBBC, which is a temporary micro cinema that operates in Brunswick for a couple of months every year. And our slogan is films you can't see anywhere else. It's part of a larger organisation called Gallery Gallery, which is basically a community or communal art gallery. There's a group of artists who put on shows, and for a couple of months we get to use that space as a cinema. So the details are all online. There's a Facebook, there's an Instagram for Gallery Gallery, and we do plan to come back and do more of that as well next year. And hopefully, as well as the film screenings, we'll have a symposium, we'll have various events like we did this year. So those. Oh, I'll mention one other thing since you've
Yeah,
kindly
quick.
given, which is a book called Far from the Masters, which is just out, which I have an essay in, but it's edited by Connell Cash and Corey Cribb, and it's a collection of essays about post-New Wave French cinema. And it's just quite a small book. It doesn't cost too much. If there's a person in your life who, is interested in post-New Wave French cinema, then, pick up a copy and it could be a Christmas present. So that's the last thing I'll mention. Thank you so much, Peter, for giving me the time to say all that.
My pleasure, Jake. Always good to hear of your list of films and your film work, etc. It's your writing. It's terrific, and it's so important that film criticism is elevated to the levels that you make in terms of talking about film and the art form that it is, and not the throwaway reviews that sometimes we have from so many people. So excellent work, and we continue to read your reviews in the Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. We've been speaking to Jake Wilson for his best films of 2025 and some more. Jake, as always, thank you so much for talking with me.
Oh, thank you, Peter, and thanks for those kind words.
All the best. Bye bye.
Bye bye.